I love him. Unless my lover doesn't work out, then I'll take half of everything in the divorce. That's essentially what my wife told me after 15 years of marriage. Also, she could run off with a coworker. My name is Mason Draymond, and 3 months ago, I honestly thought my marriage was perfect. It turns out I was as mistaken as a man can be without actually ending up dead. I'm 39 and I work as an IT project manager for a tech company near Dallas. For years, I genuinely believed my wife, Sarah, loved me. I had placed my faith in a lot of things, actually, like the idea that 15 years of shared life meant something profound, that wedding vows weren't just flowery words you spoke in front of family, and that when your wife was constantly working late on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, she was genuinely committed to her job. The very first crack in my seemingly perfect world appeared on a dreary, rainy October afternoon. I was stuck in my home office, battling a project timeline that made zero sense, when I heard Sarah's laugh drift in from the kitchen. It wasn't her usual polite, professional chuckle or the tired, end-of-day sigh of a laugh. This one was different. It felt intimate, the kind she used to save just for me back when we were dating. I crept silently to the doorway and saw her leaning against the counter, her phone pressed to her ear. She was playing with a strand of her blonde hair like a nervous teenager. She wore the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she insisted was always too formal for just hanging around the house. "Stop it. You're absolutely terrible," she whispered into the receiver, her voice filled with unmistakable flirtation. "What if he overhears you?" My stomach plummeted. I realized she was talking about me to someone else, someone who was saying things that made her giggle like a schoolgirl. I backed away slowly, my mind instantly filled with a sickening rush of thoughts. After 15 years, I was just an obstacle, a problem she had to work around. That evening, after Sarah announced she was off to her book club, which now sounded incredibly suspicious, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I invaded her privacy. Her laptop was locked, of course, but Sarah had never been a cybersecurity genius. Her password was still our anniversary date. It hadn't changed in years. Within 10 minutes, I was scrolling through her emails. I felt like a disgusting voyeur, yet I couldn't stop myself. What I found made me instantly wish I had remained blissfully ignorant. There were dozens of emails addressed to someone named Trent Willis. He worked in Sarah's HR department. The initial messages were business as usual, scheduling meetings, policy discussions, the predictable corporate stuff. But as I kept scrolling, the tone shifted. They became intensely personal. "Thanks for lunch today. I haven't laughed that hard in months." Then, "Mason is working late again. Sometimes I wonder if he even notices I exist. You make me feel alive again." And then, just 2 weeks prior, "I can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can we see each other again?" Before we continue with this shocking discovery, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and hit that notification bell. Boosting this channel helps more people find these incredible stories. I sat there in the dark, my office silent, staring at the screen. I felt as though someone had physically reached into my chest and rearranged my internal organs. 15 years, 2 beautiful daughters, a huge mortgage, a life we built together brick by brick, and she was casually tossing it all away for some guy named Trent. The worst part was that the shock quickly faded. I wasn't even truly surprised. Deep down, I'd known something was wrong for months. Sarah had been distant, constantly critical, finding fault with every single thing I did. My way of loading the dishwasher, the TV shows I watched, even my preference for beer over wine. It was a slow, steady stream of small emotional cuts, and I'd started to believe I really was as disappointing as she made me feel. Now I knew the cold, hard truth. It wasn't that I was disappointing, it was that I was in her way. I printed out the most damning emails, hid them safely in my office safe, and meticulously cleared the browser history. Sarah returned home around 11 o'clock. She smelled of wine and a strange man's cologne. She gave me a distracted peck on the cheek and went straight to bed without saying a single word. I stayed awake until the sun came up, staring at the ceiling, forming a strategy. The next morning, Sarah acted exactly as she always did, polite, efficient, and emotionally disconnected. She made her coffee, but didn't offer me any. She packed lunches for our daughters, Chloe and Maddie, and compulsively checked her phone while pretending to read the news. "Working late again tonight?" I asked casually, buttering my toast. "Probably," she replied, not even looking up. "Huge project coming up. You know how it is." Oh, I knew exactly how it was. Her huge project was about 6'2", had a gym membership, and clearly lacked a functioning moral compass. Chloe, who is 14, shot a look between us with the keen perception teenagers develop when their parents' marriage begins to fray. "Dad, can you drive me to Jessica's after school?" Mom said she'd be too busy. "Of course, sweetheart." I gently ruffled her dark hair, so much like my own. "And you, Mad, need a ride anywhere?" Our 10-year-old shook her head, focusing on her cereal. Mad was always the sensitive one, the natural peacemaker. She'd been unusually quiet lately, likely absorbing the unspoken tension between Sarah and me. After the girls left for school, Sarah gathered her work things. She was wearing a new blouse I didn't recognize, and her makeup was more elaborate than usual, clearly dressing up for Trent. "Have a good day at work," I said, watching her intently. She paused at the door, her hand resting on the knob. For one brief moment, I thought she might say something real, something honest. Instead, she simply nodded and walked out. I waited until her car was out of sight before calling in sick to my own job. I had some crucial research to do. Finding information on Trent Willis was almost ridiculously easy. The man had absolutely no regard for his own privacy. His social media profiles were wide open, packed with gym selfies and photos of lavish dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford. He was divorced, no children, and judging by his posts, he spent most of his time trying to impress women with his car, a bright red Mustang that probably cost more than my annual salary. And I had to admit, he was exactly the type of man Sarah would find attractive. Tall, muscular, with a smug confidence that suggested he'd never experienced a moment of doubt in his life. Everything, in short, that I was not. But here's the crucial thing about men like Trent Willis. They are usually only as clever as they think they are, and they certainly never expect the boring husband to fight back. I spent the rest of the day meticulously planning my next move. Sarah genuinely believed she held all the power, but she was about to discover that 15 years of marriage had also taught me a few things about her weaknesses. That night, Sarah came home 2 hours late. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and her lipstick was completely gone. She claimed she had been out with colleagues, but she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. "How was your day?" she asked, settling onto the sofa with her glass of wine. "Quiet," I said. "I spent some time organizing files. You'd be surprised what pops up when you really dig into old documents." She looked up sharply. "What kind of documents?" "Oh, the usual household paperwork, financial records, email backups." I kept my voice perfectly casual, but I saw her grip instantly tighten around her wine glass. "That sounds incredibly boring." It was actually quite enlightening. I discovered some interesting patterns in our credit card statements. A lot of charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants I've certainly never visited. Hotels booked on days you insisted you were working late. The color visibly drained from Sarah's face. She set her wine glass down with a slight tremble. "Mason, I can explain." "Can you?" I leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly. "Because I would genuinely love to hear how you explained charging a romantic dinner for two on our joint card while I was home with our daughters, believing you were stuck in a budget meeting." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in months, Sarah was completely speechless. "Here is precisely what is going to happen," I said quietly. "You are going to tell me absolutely everything. Who he is, how long this has been going on, and exactly what you thought the next step was. Then, we are going to discuss how this ends for good." Sarah's composure completely shattered. Tears streamed down her face, but they seemed rooted in sheer panic rather than any real remorse. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Oh no? Because what I think is that my wife has been having an affair with a coworker named Trent Willis for at least 3 months, funding her romantic dates with our money while lying to me and our daughters every single day. Am I wrong about any of that?" Her face went bone white. She clearly hadn't expected me to know his name. "How does any of that matter?" I stood up, looking down at her. "What matters is what happens next. And Sarah, you are absolutely not going to like what happens next." I walked out of the room, leaving her distraught on the sofa. As I headed upstairs to check on our daughters, I heard her frantically dialing her phone. "Trent, we have a problem. He knows. Phase 1 was over. Now, the real fun could finally begin." The next morning, Sarah attempted to act as if our devastating conversation had never taken place. She made coffee, packed lunches, and chattered nervously with the girls about their school day, pretending she hadn't been caught red-handed the night before. But I could see the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she kept shooting nervous glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking. I went along with the charade. I allowed her to believe that maybe she could still salvage this with enough denial and forced normalcy. People like Sarah always underestimate the true depth of the damage they've inflicted. After the girls left for school, she finally mustered the courage to approach me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, casually sipping coffee and scrolling through my tablet, acting like it was just another average morning. "Mason, about last night," she started, sitting on the edge of the chair opposite me. "What about last night?" "I think you misunderstood what you saw. Those charges weren't what you think. Sometimes the team goes out after work, and I put it on our card just to make expenses easier later. I'm sorry." I looked up from my tablet and met her eyes squarely. She instantly fell silent. "I read your emails, all of them. I know everything about Trent Willis. I know about your Tuesday and Thursday meetings, and I know you've been lying to me for months. So let's skip the part where you try to insult my intelligence with more lies, and get straight to the part where you tell me what you want." Her face cycled through shock, then anger, then calculation. Finally, she settled on a defiant mask. "Fine." She squared her shoulders, lifting her chin. "Yes, I've been seeing Trent. And yes, I've been desperately unhappy in this marriage for a very long time. We've simply grown apart, Mason. We want entirely different things now. We're different people than we were 15 years ago." "Interesting theory. When exactly did you decide we'd grown apart? Was it before or after you started having dinner dates with your coworker?" "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. You made a conscious choice. You chose to betray our marriage instead of having an honest conversation with me about the problems you thought we had. You chose to lie to our daughters. You chose to spend our money on another man. So now, I'm asking you, what do you want?" She remained silent for a long, uncomfortable moment, staring down at her hands. When she finally looked up, Her eyes held a coldness I had never witnessed before. I want a divorce. There it was. The inevitable words that had been hovering between us for months, finally spoken out loud. And Trent, that's really none of your business. Actually, it is my business. It is very much my business when my wife's affair partner is going to be spending time around my daughters. She clenched her jaw. Trent is a good man. He makes me happy. He sees me as more than just a housekeeper and a nanny. Is that honestly what you think you are here? A housekeeper and a nanny? Isn't it? When was the last time we actually went out together? Just the two of us? When was the last time you surprised me with anything thoughtful? When was the last time you made me feel like a woman instead of just a wife? I stared at her, genuinely astounded by her audacity. When was the last time you acted like you wanted to spend time with me? When was the last time you initiated any kind of affection at all? When was the last time you treated me like a husband instead of a roommate you barely tolerated? That's not fair. None of this is fair, Sarah. But here we are. I leaned back in my chair. So, you want a divorce? Fine. What exactly are your terms? She blinked, clearly unnerved by how calm I sounded. I want joint custody of the girls, and I want half of everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. That's only fair. And Trent, where does your boyfriend fit into this picture? She lifted her chin again, that defiant look returning. I love him. We're going to be together. You love him? I repeated the words slowly, savoring the taste of them after 3 months of her sneaking around. You love him? Yes. More than you love your family. It's not about choosing. It is exactly about choosing. You chose him over us, over me, over Chloe, over Matt, over the entire life we built together. I stood up and walked over to the window. Here's the thing, Sarah. You seem to think you can have it all. You think you can have your exciting new boyfriend and still keep half of everything I've worked for. You think you can blow up our family and somehow still be the hero in the movie. I'm not trying to be the good guy. I'm just trying to be happy. I turned to face her. At our expense. That's not. Let me ask you something important. Does Trent know you're married? She hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicions. He knows the situation is complicated. Does he know you have 2 daughters who think their mother is working late every Tuesday and Thursday? Mason, please. Does he know you've been using your husband's money to pay for your dates with him? Her face flushed crimson. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. You've been stealing from our family to fund your affair, and now you want to be rewarded for it with half of everything. I shook my head firmly. That's not how this is going to work. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. It displayed a folder clearly labeled evidence containing dozens of files. I mean, I've documented absolutely everything. Every single lie, every charge, every email. I have enough evidence to make your life extremely complicated in a divorce proceeding. Adultery might not be a huge factor in Texas law, but financial infidelity certainly is, and lying about it under oath definitely matters. She stared at the phone, her face completely pale. You've been planning this? I've been protecting myself, which is something I should have started doing months ago. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I'm not playing anything, Sarah. I'm simply not going to let you destroy our family and then walk away with a reward. Our family was already destroyed. You just didn't notice it happening. No, our family was destroyed the very moment you decided Trent Willis was more important than your marriage vows. She grabbed her purse and moved towards the door. I'm going to work. We'll continue this conversation later. Actually, we won't be continuing this conversation later. She froze, her hand resting on the doorknob. What? I said we are not continuing this conversation later. We are done talking. You can't do that. I can. And I am. You want a divorce? Fine. You will be hearing from my lawyer. Mason, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm giving you precisely what you asked for. I walked to the hall closet and pulled out 2 suitcases, the ones we'd used for our last family vacation when we were still pretending to be a happy couple. I've packed some of your things. The rest will be boxed up and delivered wherever you want them sent. She stared at the suitcases as if they were venomous snakes. You can't kick me out of my own house. It's not your house anymore. It's my house where I live with my daughters. You made it perfectly clear you'd rather be somewhere else. The girls. They'll be told that mom decided she needed some time to think about what she really wants, which, if we're being honest, is the truth, isn't it? Tears started to stream down her face again, but this time they looked genuine. I never wanted it to happen this way. Yes, you did. You just thought you could control exactly how it played out. I picked up the suitcases and placed them by the door. You thought you could have your affair, your divorce, and your fresh start, and that I'd just go along with whatever you decided because that's what I've always done. You thought I was too weak, too stupid, or too dependent on you to fight back. Tell me, when was the last time I actually said no to you about anything that mattered? When was the last time I stood up for myself instead of just trying to maintain the peace? She didn't answer. You got used to thinking of me as a pushover. Well, surprise. I'm not. I opened the front door and gestured toward the suitcases. Your boyfriend is waiting, isn't he? I'm sure he'll be thrilled to help you figure out your next move. She picked up the luggage with trembling hands. This isn't over, Mason. Yes, it is. You just don't realize it yet. She walked out, and I immediately closed the door behind her. I threw the deadbolt and slid the security chain into place. Through the window, I watched her load the bags into her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, probably calling Trent, desperately trying to figure out her next steps. Finally, she drove away. I walked into my office and opened my laptop. I had a lot of work to do before the girls got home from school. Sarah's first mistake was believing I'd changed my mind overnight. Her second mistake was dramatically underestimating how much our daughters had already figured out. That afternoon, I picked up Chloe and Mad from school, and we made a stop for ice cream on the way home. It was a simple pleasure Sarah never had time for, always too busy with her work projects. Dad, Chloe said carefully, spooning a mouthful of mint chocolate chip into her mouth. Is Mom okay? She looked really upset this morning. Mad looked up from her strawberry cone, her big brown eyes filled with deep worry. I had been dreading this inevitable conversation, but I was prepared for it. Mom and I are having some problems right now, I said honestly. They are grown-up problems that have nothing to do with either of you. But I want you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, we both love you very, very much. Are you guys getting a divorce? Chloe asked bluntly. At 14, she was far too smart to be placated with vague, gentle assurances. I don't know yet. Maybe. Would that frighten you? She considered the question seriously. Jessica's parents got divorced last year. She said it was actually better afterward because they finally stopped fighting all the time. You and Mom don't fight, Maddie said quietly. No, we don't, but we haven't been very happy together lately either. Is that why Mom is always on her phone? Chloe pressed. And why she never wants to do family movie nights anymore? Smart kid. Too smart by half. Your mom has been very distracted lately, with work and some other things. Other things like what? I looked at my 14-year-old daughter, who was forced to be much wiser than she should have been, and I made a difficult decision. A friend from work who's become very important to her. Chloe's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She was old enough to read clearly between the lines. We finished our ice cream in a heavy, contemplative silence. When we pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was already there. She was sitting on the porch steps with her suitcases, looking utterly lost, like a small child. When she saw us, she immediately jumped up and rushed toward us. Girls, I'm so glad you're home. I was so worried. Mom, what are your suitcases doing outside? Mari asked, her voice small. Sarah shot me a look of pure venom. Your father and I had a disagreement this morning. He thinks I should stay somewhere else for a while. Why? Chloe asked, looking sharply between us. Why? Because your mother has decided she'd rather spend her time with someone else, I said quietly. Someone from work. Sarah's face went white. Mason, don't. Don't what? Don't tell them the truth? They're not stupid, Sarah. They've noticed you're never here. I've been working. No, you haven't been working. I pulled out my phone and held up the screen. I called your office this morning. I spoke to your assistant, and we had a very interesting conversation. It turns out you haven't worked late a single Tuesday or Thursday for the past 2 months. In fact, you've been leaving early on those days. The girls looked at their mother, realization dawning in their eyes. Mom, Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. Is Dad telling the truth? Sarah's composure finally broke completely. She sank down onto the porch steps and began to sob uncontrollably. It's complicated, honey. You wouldn't possibly understand. I understand you lied to us, Chloe said, her voice sounding older and harder than I'd ever heard it. I understand you've been sneaking around and lying about where you were. Chloe, please. Is it true? Maddie asked, fresh tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. Do you have a boyfriend? Sarah looked at our 10-year-old daughter, her face streaked with tears and confusion, and something deep inside her seemed to snap. Yes, she whispered. Yes, it's true. Mad's face crumpled. She ran straight to me and buried herself in my side. Chloe simply stared at her mother with a look of disappointment that was far too heavy for a 14-year-old girl. How could you do that to Dad? Don't you understand? I understand you cheated. I understand you lied. And I understand you hurt our family. Chloe's voice trembled with sudden anger. Jessica's mom cheated, too. That's why her parents got a divorce. And you know what Jessica told me? She said she was relieved her dad found out because her mom was making everyone miserable with all the lying. Sarah looked as though she'd been physically struck. Chloe, that's not fair. What's not fair is what you did to us. I put my arm firmly around Chloe's shoulders. Girls, why don't you go inside and start on your homework? Your mother and I need to finish our conversation. They went inside, Mad sniffling, and Chloe looking like she was seconds away from punching something. Sarah and I faced each other across the driveway. You had absolutely no right to tell them like that, she finally managed. I had every right. They're my daughters, too, and they deserve to know why their mother suddenly decided she didn't want to live here anymore. I never said I didn't want to live here. You didn't have to say it. You showed it to them every day for months. You showed them that something else was more important than being their mom. That's not true, is it? When was the last time you helped them with homework? When was the last time you asked about their day and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you tucked Maddie in at night or had a genuine conversation with Chloe about something other than chores? She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. You checked out of this family long before you ever started your affair, Sarah. Trent was just the convenient excuse you used to make it official. I never wanted to hurt them. But you did hurt them, and you're going to keep hurting them every day you choose him over them. It's not about choosing. It is always about choosing. Every day, every decision, every single priority you set. And you've made your choice crystal clear. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled grimly. Who is it? Sarah asked, suspicious. My lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. Her face went pale again. I told you I'd been preparing. I filed this morning, right after you left. You can't. I can. And I did. You wanted a divorce, Sarah? Congratulations. You're getting one. I pulled a thick envelope from my jacket pocket and handed it to her. What is this? Your copy of the filing. You have 30 days to respond. She opened the envelope with visibly trembling hands and scanned the first page. You're asking for sole custody. I'm asking for primary custody with supervised visitation for you until we can establish that you are capable of putting our daughter's needs ahead of your own. That is ridiculous. Is it? You've been lying to them for months. You prioritized your affair over their emotional well-being. You've been using money that should be going to their needs to fund romantic dinners with your boyfriend. How does that exactly demonstrate good parenting? I've never neglected them. You've been emotionally absent for months. They noticed, Sarah. Kids always notice. She frantically flipped through more pages, her face growing paler with each one. You're asking for alimony. I'm asking for child support. There's a critical difference. And the house stays with me and the girls. They've been through enough upheaval. They shouldn't have to lose their home, too. This is insane. You can't just keep everything. I'm not keeping anything. I'm keeping what's mine and what's best for our daughters. You're the one who decided to throw it all away. She stood up abruptly, clutching the legal papers. I need to call my lawyer. You do that. And Sarah, when you talk to Trent about all this, you might want to mention that his wife might be interested in knowing about his activities. She froze. What wife? I pulled out my phone and showed her a Facebook profile. Trent Willis, married to Ashley Will for 8 years, 2 young sons. You didn't know? I asked innocently. How interesting. I wonder what else he forgot to mention. Sarah stared at the screen as if I were showing her a horrific car wreck. That's impossible. He's divorced. He told you he lied, just like you lied to me. Funny how that works out. She scrolled through the photos with shaking hands. Trent with his wife at a restaurant. Trent with his sons at a baseball game. Trent at a family barbecue just last weekend. But he said exactly what you wanted to hear, just like you told me what you thought I wanted to hear for months. She sank back onto the porch steps, staring blankly at the phone. I don't understand. You don't understand because you actively chose not to. You wanted to believe in a fantasy where you could have everything you wanted with absolutely no consequences. I took my phone back, slipping it into my pocket. Well, here's a consequence. Trent Willis is a liar and a cheater, just like you. The only difference is he's better at it than you are. Sarah looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. What am I supposed to do now? That is no longer my problem. But if I were you, I'd start by figuring out where you're going to sleep tonight, because it will not be here. I picked up her suitcases and placed them by her car. The girls will need time to process all this. I think it's best if you give them some space for a few days. You can't keep me from my own daughters. I'm not keeping you from anything. I'm suggesting that forcing yourself on them right now, when they are hurt and angry, might not be the best parenting choice. But then again, good parenting choices haven't exactly been your strong suit lately. She stood up slowly, looking defeated. I never wanted it to happen this way. You didn't want to get off easy. You wanted to have your affair, your divorce, and your fresh start. And you wanted everyone to just accept it and move on without a fuss. You wanted to blow up our family and still manage to play the victim. I opened her car door for her. Life simply doesn't work that way, Sarah. Actions have consequences, and you're about to learn what those consequences look like. She got into the car without another word. I watched her drive away. Then I went inside to check on my daughters. They were in the living room, ostensibly doing homework, but clearly listening intently to every word of our confrontation. Is Mom coming back? Matt asked. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. Good, Chloe said fiercely. I don't want to see her right now. I sat down between them on the sofa and put my arms around both of them. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be confused. What happened is not your fault, and it doesn't mean either of us loves you any less. Will she choose him over us? Mari asked. I thought about that painful question very carefully. I don't know, sweetheart. I truly hope not. But if she does, that's her choice, and it reflects on her, not on you. What if she tries to make us live with him? Chloe asked. That's not going to happen. I promise you. We ordered pizza for dinner and watched a movie together, just the three of us. For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. But I knew this fragile peace wouldn't last. Sarah would not go quietly, and Trent Willis was certainly not going to appreciate having his perfect life exposed. The real war, the legal one, was just beginning. Sarah's lawyer, Janet Morrison, called me the very next morning. She was a high-priced family law specialist known for her aggressive approach. I wasn't surprised Sarah had hired her. It was precisely the kind of power move she thought would intimidate me. Mr. Draymond, I represent Sarah Draymond in your divorce proceedings. I'd like to discuss a settlement before this escalates and becomes contentious. I thought it already became contentious when your client started having an affair. My client's personal relationships are not relevant to the division of marital assets. Actually, they're highly relevant when those relationships involve spending marital assets on someone else without the spouse's consent. There was a noticeable pause. Sarah hadn't given her lawyer the full picture about the financial infidelity. Interesting. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss the details more thoroughly. I'm certain we'll have plenty of opportunities to discuss details. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. I hung up and immediately called my own lawyer, David Shun. We were college friends, and he specialized in exactly the kind of messy, high-stakes divorce Sarah was about to experience. Mason, I've got your documents. This is pretty cut and dried, David said. She doesn't have much of a negotiating position here. She thinks she does. She hired Janet Morrison. Morrison is good, but she can't perform miracles. Your wife made some monumentally bad choices, and you documented them perfectly. The financial misconduct alone is going to significantly damage her case, especially regarding custody. They're not happy with their mother right now. That's unfortunate for her, but it strongly supports our case. The court's #1 concern is the best interests of the children. Given the evidence you've provided, I'd say you have an excellent chance of securing primary custody. The girls are old enough for their preferences to carry serious weight. Okay, what's our very next move? I'll file our response to any settlement offer, and we wait for her to make the first legal mistake. She's already made plenty of personal ones. I mean legal mistakes. Right now, she's likely panicking and making purely emotional decisions. Emotional decisions lead directly to tactical errors. He was right. Sarah called that afternoon, weeping and begging me to change my mind. Mason, please, we can fix this. We don't need lawyers and courts and all this ugliness. We needed to fix it before you started lying and cheating. It's far too late now. It's not too late. I made a mistake, but we can fix it. And Trent, she paused for a very long beat. I'm not seeing him anymore. Oh no? Since when? Since I found out he lied to me too. I almost felt a flicker of sympathy for her. Almost. So, now that your exciting new lover turned out to be a fraud, you want your plan B back. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You wanted to upgrade, and when that didn't work out, you decided maybe your old life wasn't so bad after all. I love you, Mason. I know I messed up, but I love you. No, you don't love me. You love the security I represent. You love having someone stable to fall back on when your exciting new life crashes and burns. But you do not love me. That is not true. When was the last time you told me you loved me and genuinely meant it? When was the last time you looked at me like you were truly happy to see me? When was the last time you treated me like someone you wanted to be with, instead of someone you were stuck with? She couldn't answer. You checked out of this marriage months ago, Sarah. The only reason you want back in now is because you're terrified of being alone. I'm scared of losing my family. You already lost your family. You threw it away for a man who was using you in the exact same way you were using me. Please, Mason, just give me another chance. I gave you 15 years of chances. They are all used up. I hung up the phone and blocked her number immediately. But Sarah wasn't finished trying. She showed up at the girls' school the next day, attempting to pick them up early. The office staff called me immediately. I had already put them on high alert about the custody situation. Mr. Draymond, Mrs. Draymond is here asking to take the girls home. She seems quite upset. Do not release them to her. I'm on my way right now. I arrived to find Sarah in the principal's office, locked in a heated argument with Mrs. Patterson about her parental rights. They're my daughters. You can't prevent me from taking them. Actually, we can, Mrs. Patterson said calmly. Mr. Draymond provided us with documentation that clearly shows custody is currently in dispute. Until that's resolved, we must follow his instructions as the custodial parent. Sarah turned when she saw me, her face streaked with tears and running mascara. Mason, please. I just want to talk to them. You can talk to them during your supervised visits, once the court establishes them. Supervised visits? They are my daughters. They are our daughters, and right now they don't want to see you. Forcing the issue isn't going to help your case in the slightest. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps this conversation would be better continued outside. Sarah followed me out to the parking lot, still pleading. This is insane. You're actively poisoning them against me. I'm not poisoning them against anyone. They are old enough to fully understand what you did, and they are reacting accordingly. They'll eventually forgive me. Kids are resilient. Maybe they will, but forgiveness is not the same thing as trust, and trust is not the same as wanting you to be in their lives. You can't keep them from me forever. I'm not keeping them from you. I'm protecting them from more emotional harm while you figure out if being their mother is truly important to you. Of course, it's important to me. Is it? Because when you had to make a choice between your family and Trent Willis, you chose Trent. When you had to choose between your daughter's emotional well-being and your own selfish desires, you chose yourself. Why should they believe that has suddenly changed? She looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. I made a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices over a period of months. Those weren't mistakes, Sarah. They were decisions. People can change, can't they? Because 2 days ago you were telling me how much you loved him and how unhappy you were in our marriage. Now, suddenly, you love me again and desperately want to save our family. Which version is the real you? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The real you is the woman who spent 3 months lying to her daughters just so she could sneak around with a married man. The real you is the woman who was willing to destroy her family for someone she barely knew. That's who you are, Sarah. Own it. I walked away, leaving her utterly alone in the school parking lot. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Mr. Draymond? Who's asking? This is Ashley Willis. I think we need to talk. Trent's wife. This was about to get very interesting. I think you're absolutely right. When and where? We met at a downtown coffee shop the next evening. Ashley Willis was a petite, attractive woman with profoundly tired eyes and the look of someone who had been holding her life together purely through sheer force of will. I found some interesting text messages on my husband's phone, she said without any preamble. Messages from your wife. I'm sorry you had to discover it that way. Are you? Because you're the one who sent me the anonymous email with the information about their affair. I had, indeed, sent her screenshots of Sarah and Trent's messages. You deserve to know the truth. Yes, I did. Just like you deserve to know. She pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. These are from yesterday. The messages were from Sarah, desperately begging Trent to meet her, claiming she had left me and that they could finally be together. His replies were brutally cold. It was fun while it lasted, but I'm not leaving my family for you. Find someone else to solve your problems. She really doesn't know when to quit, I commented. Neither does he. This isn't his first affair, but it will absolutely be his last. You're divorcing him. I'm going to take him for everything he has, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man he is. She pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the table. Copies of everything I found. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, emails. I thought they might be useful to you. I flipped through the documents. It was a treasure trove of evidence. Why are you helping me? Because your wife isn't the only victim here. My children are victims. Your daughters are victims. And I'm exhausted by selfish people thinking they can destroy families without facing any consequences. What are you planning to do? I'm going to make sure everyone at their office knows exactly what they've been up to. I'm going to make sure everyone in our social circle knows. I'm going to make sure their reputations are as destroyed as they tried to make our families. I immediately warmed to Ashley Willis. If you need any help with that. Actually, I do. There's a big company party next weekend. The annual picnic. All the employees and their families attend. I think it would be incredibly educational for everyone to learn the truth about Sarah and Trent there. What exactly did you have in mind? She smiled, and it was a look of pure, cold resolve. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. By the time we finished our coffee, we had an airtight plan. Sarah and Trent thought they could sneak around, lie, and hurt innocent people without repercussions. They were about to discover just how terribly wrong they were. The Meridian Industries annual family picnic was a large event held every October at Lexile Park, featuring catered barbecue, children's games, and endless corporate networking. Sarah had always insisted we attend, claiming we needed to keep up appearances and support her career. This year, I was going to be supporting her career in a very different, destructive way. Ashley had done her homework thoroughly. She had identified the key people who needed to hear the truth: HR executives, department heads, and especially the wives of other male employees who had started noticing Sarah's sudden friendliness toward their husbands. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. No dramatic confrontations, no shouting, just the controlled delivery of information to the right people at the right moment, and then letting human nature do the rest. I arrived at the picnic with Chloe and Maddie. They were still reeling from everything that had happened, but they were excited about the games and the food. Sarah was already there, near the registration table, trying to project a facade of normalcy. She rushed over when she saw us. Mason, girls, I'm so glad you came. Chloe subtly shifted behind me. Mad just looked at her mother with those big, sad eyes. We came for the girls, I stated simply. They enjoy the games. Of course, that's wonderful. Sarah looked around nervously. Maybe we could sit together as a family? We are sitting as a family, Chloe said, her voice sharp and cold. Just not with you. Sarah flinched, but quickly regained her composure. Chloe, honey, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. There's a big difference. My 14-year-old daughter marched off toward the game area. Mad followed without a word. They'll come around, Sarah said, though she didn't sound convinced. Maybe, or maybe not. That's entirely up to you now. I left her standing there and went to find Ashley Willis. She was near the food tables, talking quietly with Mrs. Henderson from HR and Mrs. Park, the wife of Sarah's department head. The conversation looked intense and hushed. I gathered my daughters and found a picnic table with a clear view of the proceedings. Within an hour, I could see the effects of Ashley's information campaign spreading through the crowd like ripples in water. Groups of women would suddenly huddle together, talking quietly, and then glance over pointedly at Sarah. Men who would normally greet her warmly were now finding reasons to be anywhere else. The friendly atmosphere around her was evaporating instantly. Trent arrived with his own family around noon, seemingly oblivious to the storm gathering around him. He was all smiles and handshakes, playing the role of the devoted husband and father. That lasted about 10 minutes. I watched from across the park as Ashley approached her husband, standing with their two young sons. The conversation was brief and quiet, but I watched Trent's face shift rapidly from confusion to sheer panic as she spoke. Then, Ashley walked away, leaving him standing alone with his boys, who looked completely bewildered. "Dad, what's going on?" Chloe asked, following my gaze. "Justice," I replied simply. Within another hour, both Sarah and Trent had been separately pulled aside by different HR executives for informal chats. I couldn't hear what was being said, but their body language told the entire story. Sarah kept gesturing frantically, trying to justify or explain her way out of it. Trent just stood there, looking like he wished the ground would swallow him whole. The afternoon continued its steady, downward spiral. Sarah's usual work friends suddenly had urgent places to be. Trent's gym buddies stopped including him in their conversations. Even the catered barbecue must have tasted like ashes, judging by the expressions on their faces. Around 3 o'clock, Sarah finally worked up the nerve to approach our table again. "Mason, can we talk somewhere private?" "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes." I looked at my daughters. Chloe shrugged. Mad nodded slightly. "5 minutes," I said, getting up. We walked to a secluded area near the lake, away from the rest of the crowd. "This is completely your doing," Sarah said without preamble. "You are actively destroying my career." "I'm not destroying anything, Sarah. I'm just making sure people know the truth about what you've been doing. You told Ashley Willis about us." Ashley Willis deserved to know her husband was cheating on her, just like I deserved to know my wife was cheating on me. That's different. How is it different? Why? Because we were already having problems? Ashley and Trent were happy. I stared at her, genuinely speechless. Do you even hear yourself? Are you seriously arguing that it was okay to blow up their happy marriage because ours wasn't perfect? That's not what I meant. That is exactly what you meant. You've convinced yourself that your affair was justified because you were unhappy, but somehow, their marriage was supposed to be sacred. I never wanted it to go this far. You never wanted to get caught. There's a massive difference. She glanced nervously around at the picnic, where small groups were still talking and casting glances our way. Everyone's staring at me. Yes, they are. Because they've just found out that someone they trusted has been lying to them for months. I can't possibly go back to work after this. Probably not. Actions have consequences, Sarah. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the results. And the girls? What about their college funds? What about our future? You should have considered all of that before you decided that Trent Willis was more important than your family. Her face crumpled, and she started to weep again, but it didn't feel like genuine remorse. It felt like pure self-pity, a desperate attempt to claw back sympathy that had long since been spent. She wiped at her eyes, but the tears just kept coming. "I honestly don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "Please, Mason, help me figure this out." I looked at the woman who had been my wife for 15 years. The woman who had shared my bed, raised our children, and vowed to love me. But as I looked at her, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, just complete, heavy emptiness. "You're on your own, Sarah, just like you wanted to be." With that, I turned and walked back to my daughters, leaving her sobbing by the lake. The finality of the moment washed over me. I was finished. I had given everything I had to a marriage that had ceased to be real. And the true feeling was relief, the profound relief of walking away from that crushing weight. We stayed for another hour, just long enough for the girls to play the last of the games and enjoy the surprisingly good barbecue. As we were leaving, Ashley Willis approached our table. "Mr. Draymond," she said, her voice a little shaky, but filled with gratitude. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" I asked, surprised by the sentiment. "For helping me see the truth, and for helping me find the courage to do something about it." I raised an eyebrow. "What's going to happen now?" "Trent has been suspended pending a full investigation," she explained. "Apparently, using company resources for personal affairs violates several serious policies. And I filed for divorce this morning. I'm sorry it came to this for you." "Don't be," she replied, shaking her head. "I'm sorry it took so long for me to see it." She looked at Chloe and Maddie, who were listening intently. "Girls, I want you to know that what your parents are going through is not your fault. Sometimes adults make very bad choices, and other adults have to clean up the mess." "We know," Chloe said solemnly, her eyes mature beyond her years. "Dad explained it all to us." Ashley gave me a quick, approving look, and I nodded. It had been an agonizing thing to explain, but I had done my best to shield them from the worst of the emotional fallout. "Your father seems like a truly good man," Ashley said, smiling softly. "You're lucky to have him." "We know that, too," Maddie said quietly, looking up at me with quiet pride in her eyes. The conversation settled into a comfortable, easy silence after that. The day had played out in ways I hadn't expected, but the sense of finality was palpable. Ashley was taking charge of her life. Sarah was facing the severe consequences of her actions. And I was finally free from the heavy burden I'd carried for far too long. As we walked toward the car, a deep sense of peace settled over me, a peace I hadn't known in years. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the betrayer. In the end, that knowledge was enough. Sometimes, the only path forward is through the painful truth, and I was finally living in it. Ashley smiled and walked away toward her own children waiting near the parking lot. As we gathered our things, I saw Sarah one last time. She was sitting alone at a picnic table, staring blankly at her phone. Most of the other families had already gone, and the few groups remaining were deliberately giving her a wide berth. She looked small, utterly lost, and completely isolated. "Do you feel sorry for her?" Chloe asked, following my gaze. I considered her question carefully. I feel sorry for the person she used to be, or the person I thought she was. But for the person she actually is, the woman who was willing to lie to you and your sister for months? No, I don't feel sorry for her. Good, Chloe said fiercely. She doesn't deserve it. We drove home in a comfortable silence, the radio playing softly, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe completely. My phone buzzed with a text message just as we pulled into our driveway. It was from David Shun, my lawyer. Sarah's lawyer called. They want to discuss settlement terms. I think we have them exactly where we want them. I smiled and put the phone away. The war wasn't completely finished yet, but I was winning, and Sarah was finally learning what it felt like to be held accountable for her choices. The settlement conference was scheduled for the following Wednesday at David Shin's office. Sarah arrived with Janet Morrison and a briefcase full of documents, clearly ready to mount some desperate legal counterattack. She looked utterly drained. Her normally flawless hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail. Her makeup was minimal, and she wore a wrinkled blouse, suggesting she'd been sleeping on someone's uncomfortable sofa. "Mason," she said quietly as we sat down at the conference table, "thank you for agreeing to mediation. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the girls." Janet Morrison cleared her throat and opened her briefcase. "My client is prepared to make a reasonable settlement offer that takes into account the best interests of the children." David Shin leaned back in his chair. "We're listening intently. Mrs. Draymond is willing to accept a 60-40 split of the marital assets, with her taking the smaller portion. She's also willing to agree to joint custody with alternating weeks." "Interesting," David said. "What exactly does she want in return for these concessions?" "She wants Mr. Draymond to agree not to pursue the claims of financial infidelity. And she wants a non-disclosure agreement that prevents either party from publicly discussing the details of the marriage breakdown." I nearly laughed out loud. "Let me be perfectly clear. She wants me to pretend she didn't steal money from our family to fund her affair, and she wants to guarantee I can't tell anyone else the truth about what she did." "My client made some poor personal choices, but your client committed adultery and financial fraud," David countered smoothly. "Those aren't just poor personal choices. They are severe betrayals of trust and violations of her fiduciary duty as a spouse." Sarah spoke up for the first time. "Mason, please. I know I hurt you, but dragging this through the courts isn't going to help anyone. It's going to help our daughters understand that actions have consequences. They're children. They don't need to know all the ugly details." "They already know the ugly details, Sarah. They live them. They watched you lie to them for months. They watched you choose another man over their family. I never chose anyone over them. You chose Trent over them every single time you lied about where you were going. You chose him over them every time you spent money that should have gone to their needs on romantic dinners with him. You chose him over them every time you came home late, distracted, and emotionally unavailable." Sarah's face crumpled. "I was confused. I was unhappy. I made mistakes. You made choices, and now you get to live with the consequences." David Shin pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "Here is our counteroffer. Mr. Draymond retains the house and all marital assets. Mrs. Draymond receives supervised visitation every other weekend until she completes therapy and demonstrates consistent, child-focused behavior for at least 6 months. Janet Morrison's eyebrows shot up dramatically. "That is completely unreasonable. What's unreasonable is asking my client to reward his wife's adultery and financial betrayal with half of everything he's worked for. The court will not support such a one-sided settlement. The court will support whatever is in the best interests of the children. Given the overwhelming evidence we have of Mrs. Draymond's destructive behavior, I believe we are in a very strong legal position." David opened another folder and spread out the evidence. Photographs, bank statements, printed emails, hotel receipts charged to the family card, restaurant bills for two when Mr. Draymond was home with the girls, text messages detailing the lies she planned to tell her family, and phone records showing hundreds of calls to Mr. Willis during work hours. Sarah stared at the evidence spread across the table as if it were a horrific crime scene, which, in a way, it was. "We also have formal statements from the girls expressing their strong preference to live primarily with their father, and documentation of Mrs. Draymond's unauthorized attempt to remove them from school." "That was a misunderstanding," Sarah began weakly. "It was a clear violation of the custody agreement we had already established," I cut in, "just like everything else you've done since this started." Janet Morrison gathered the documents and whispered something urgently to Sarah, who shook her head vehemently. "My client needs time to consider this punitive offer." "Of course she does. Take all the time you need, but understand that this offer expires in 72 hours. After that, we go to trial and let a judge decide the outcome." "And if we go to trial?" Sarah asked quietly, her voice barely audible. "If we go to trial, all of this becomes public record. Every email, every lie, every dollar you spent on your affair. Is that really what you want for yourself and your daughters? Sarah looked genuinely ill. I need to think about this carefully. Think fast, I said, getting up quickly. Because I am finished negotiating. I walked out of the conference room, leaving Sarah and her lawyer to contemplate their rapidly shrinking options. David caught up with me in the hallway. That went perfectly. I believe she'll take the deal, and if she doesn't, we will absolutely destroy her in court. With the evidence we have, she'll be lucky to get supervised visits once a month. My phone rang as I was driving home. It was Sarah. Mason, please don't do this to me. Do what? Hold you accountable for your choices? Destroy my relationship with my daughters? I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. They'll forgive me eventually, but not if you turn them completely against me. I haven't turned them against you, Sarah. You did that all by yourself. Please, I'm begging you. I'll sign whatever papers you want. But please, don't take my daughters away from me. I'm not taking them away from you. I'm protecting them from enduring more emotional harm while you figure out if being their mother is truly important to you. Of course, it's important to me. Then prove it. Take the deal. Go to therapy. Learn how to consistently put their needs ahead of your own. Show them that they matter more than whatever man you happen to be interested in this week. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that Chloe is going to struggle with trust issues because her mother lied to her for months? Is it fair that Maddie cries herself to sleep wondering if she did something wrong? Is it fair that they have to live knowing their mother willingly chose a stranger over their entire family? Sarah was crying again, but I was completely done caring. You want your daughters back? Then earn them back. Prove you're capable of being the mother they deserve. How am I supposed to do that with supervised visits? The same way you're supposed to do everything else from now on. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one chance to do better than you did yesterday. I disconnected the call and blocked her number permanently. The next morning, David Shin called with the news I expected. She took the deal, signed everything. It's over. Just like that. Just like that. She gets supervised visits every other weekend. You get primary custody and the house. She agrees not to contest any of the financial arrangements. And she dropped that insane demand for a non-disclosure agreement. I think she finally realized it was far better to take the settlement quietly than to risk having everything aired out in open court. So it's truly over. It's really over, Mason. Congratulations. You won. I hung up the phone and looked around my kitchen. My kitchen, in my house, where my daughters would grow up safe, loved, and finally free from the emotional chaos their mother had created. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt tired, deeply sad, and immensely relieved. All those emotions hit at once, but mostly, I felt free. That afternoon, I picked the girls up from school and took them for ice cream again. It was rapidly becoming our new tradition, a small ritual of normalcy amidst all the upheaval. Dad, Chloe said, spooning a mouthful of mint chocolate chip into her mouth. Are you happy now? I considered the question carefully. I'm not happy about what happened to our family, but I am happy that we are going to be okay. We are going to be better than okay. In fact, we're going to be completely honest with each other. We're going to take care of each other, and we're going to build something good and strong out of what's left. And Mom, what about her? She's going to be okay. I looked at my daughters, these incredible, resilient little people who had endured so much yet were still capable of caring about the person who had hurt them. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so, but that's entirely up to her now. I hope so too, said Matt quietly, her voice soft, even though she hurt us. That's very grown up of you, sweetheart. Dad, Chloe said. Yes. Thanks for protecting us. Thanks for being worth protecting. We finished our ice cream and drove home through the golden October afternoon, the radio playing softly and the future stretching out before us like a wide open road. Sarah had thrown the first punch, but I had decisively ended the fight. We were going to be just fine. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.